As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep.
Put pucks in deep.
We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
Next guest spent 15 seasons in the NHL, was part of the 2006 Olympic roster on Team USA, and also a 2006 Stanley Cup champion. The reason a couple of the jerseys are hanging behind me, and it's my pleasure to welcome Erik Cole onto the podcast. Erik, how's it going?
Great. Can't complain. How about you guys?
Well, it's a bummer USA couldn't get it done, but hockey is certainly thriving. So it's an exciting time to be a hockey fan right now. I'm sure you enjoyed it just as much as we did. And we'll start right on the Four Nations tournament. You watched just about all of them, you said. What were your impressions there on that tournament, the physicality brought by each side? You were a player as well and represented a couple of these midseason tournaments. Was that something that you expected the physicality to come with? Because a lot of the analysts were kind of speculating that it might be more of an all-star vibe.
No, see, I think that was the beauty of it being, the Four Nations. I think the one, real downer, and I'm sure, if you look back at World Championships last year and the team that won the World Championships was not part of the Four Nations Cup. So, I mean, hopefully there's, a little bit of room for expansion with that, or there's a way to include a few more countries. But I do think it was a big success. I think, I don't know how many people sent it to me, but there was something going around where there was all the comparables about, the NFL turned their Pro Bowl into flag football. The NBA guys barely break a sweat, and the NHL guys, throwing fists 9 seconds into the game. So it's definitely a different feel. But I think it was great. The biggest thing and sometimes the worst thing is, and probably everybody's fear is if, there are injuries, which obviously, a few injuries coming out of that tournament, but at the same time, midway through an NHL season, everybody's a little dinged up, a little banged up. It's just the nature of the game, and that's kind of how it goes. So, but I thought obviously the fan turnout was incredible as expected. Montreal, as we've spoke about before, is one of my favorite buildings and just one of my favorite cities to go and visit. Just the aura that is around that organization, and you feel it from the moment the plane lands. But I thought it was great. It was great hockey. I think more so than the fact that there was a good amount of physicality, the speed of the game was incredible. When you sit there and you watch, all these guys from, Canada, US, Finland, and Sweden, it's all the best that are, they're in mid-season form. They're all like ready to go, and just the amount of talent that was on the ice for each team was incredible.
Yeah, you mentioned the comparison between All-Star games. I remember watching Hagel and Kachuk throw knuckles at the same time that LiAngelo Ball was performing for the NBA All-Star game. So I think in terms of opportunity, taking advantage of it, the NHL did a great job. And, there was tons of huge numbers that came out of there from viewership. How do you think the NHL builds on this momentum and make sure that this isn't kind of a flash in the pan?
Well, I think it's going to be a little bit of, I think, like a juggling act for the NHL, because obviously, NHL cities do want all-star games, and they want to host, things like that. I mean, is it a situation where they start rotating, the Four Nations Cup, like, series through two other NHL cities next year? Is there some way for that to make sense, where you have, that tournament that actually tours around? And I think that would be pretty interesting to do. I'm not sure logistically how they'd want to work that out or anything, And then obviously the possibility of adding, a couple more teams. I know, the Russian players are, still on lockdown due to what's going on politically, which is unfortunate, for them. But I mean, as we saw the other night, it looked like Ovi took full like full. I can't even think of the word. I kind of wanted to make a joke in there, but he took full advantage of the time off and the rest as he's chasing down Gretz's number.
You played your high school hockey up to the 96-97 season, just 1 year in the USHL, and you were drafted in 1998 by the Carolina Hurricanes, but chose to go the NCAA route, which at the time was pretty unconventional for guys looking to have as bright of an NHL career as you did. At what point in your career did you realize that maybe it was a possibility to make it to the NHL, and then as far as you went to the Olympics, to representing Team USA, winning a Stanley Cup?
It was early on in Des Moines, actually. One of the first weekends in Des Moines, I finished a hit on a defenseman from Omaha. I was thinking it was Yoder, maybe Jamie Yoder, sounds familiar. And if you get in a fight in a game, you get sent to the dressing room, and you gotta shower up. Your day's over. And I finished a hit on him kind of early in the first period, and he didn't like it very much. And so he grabbed me, and we had a little dance, and I got showered up, and I went upstairs to kind of our team's viewing area, and a member of Central Scouting was up there, and I just happened to sit down at the table next to him, and he introduced himself and just kind of talked to me a little bit about the process, because it wasn't really something that I knew much about, really. And I think it was in that year that I gained a lot of confidence in myself. Just every night playing in that league, I was playing against other guys that were all scholarship players. Every team you look up and down their roster, and it's that guy's going to Michigan, that guy's going to Minnesota, this guy's going to North Dakota, here's BU, BC. It was across the board, where there was all the top players that were playing hockey in the United States that were headed to college were all there, and I had a pretty good season there. I thought it was a great experience for me. I probably could have used one more year there just to mature, both physically and grow up a little bit more before going off to school. But no, it was a great experience, and certainly one that prepared me well for Clarkson and taking that next step into college hockey.
Our first ever guest submission to the show comes on a question from Clarkson Golden Knights superfan Josh Bartell. He writes in wondering what your favorite memory from Clarkson is, and also wants to know if you feel personally responsible at all for Dave Evans finishing his career 1 point shy of 100 career points at 99.
Oh, man. Okay, so the first part of that will be, I would say that my sophomore year, who we were just, we were back north last year to celebrate 25 years since our league title and tournament title. That was a lot of fun. It was fun even just going back last year and reminiscing with all the guys that were able to make it. But we really came together as a group within the locker room. There was a lot of just noise that we tuned out. And we, when the locker room door closed and it was just the players in there, we had meetings and, discussed, certain things that I think really resonated with our group. And I think that, us doing that and just getting all the, everything else out of the locker room and just, focusing together that we're all in this, the guys that are in the room, it's us, and let's just, let's see what we can do. Because we believed in one another. We believed in what we were doing, and we went on a great run. I think we might have won like 13 or 14 in a row to finish off like the regular season. We might have had a hiccup in there somewhere, but we were pretty dialed in, and then you get to Lake Placid, which for me is one of my favorite places. Being an upstate New York kid, I played in that arena when I was 12 years old, 11 years old. And, for me, you relish opportunities to play in buildings like that. So for me, it's always been a real special place, and to have such a wild game in the semis against Princeton, where there was a lot of panic on our bench that was kind of like almost being put on us. And we end up surviving from Willie's knuckle puck, which is, oh man, I think I picked on Jeff Halpern quite a bit. Speaking of another Team USA guy, I picked on him quite a bit about that one when we had time together playing for Team USA. To set the stage for a rivalry matchup with St. Lawrence was wonderful. It was standing room only. You knew what it meant to everybody in the North Country. So it was just such a fun game to play in, and it was back and forth, and we played well. Once, especially once we took the lead in the third period on Benny's goal, we had it in lockdown mode. Like, I think we all recognized that we were going to be able to, to win that game 3-2. And so, it was just by far my favorite moment was winning both championships with that group. It was just a great year. It was a lot of fun. To the second part of that question, you can only, put a backdoor tap in, or, put a perfect pass on Davey Stick so many times that, sometimes the onus has to fall on him to actually maybe finish one of those opportunities. But Deacon Dave was somebody I kind of razzed a little bit when he first came in as a freshman, and I was only a year in front of him, but I'd announce him as like Francois Botha every time he came walking into the locker room from the dry stall area. I think it had to do a little bit with his boxers, but like he also kind of like, he'd thumb it and he'd come kind of bouncing into the dressing room because he was always, running a little bit behind from class. But he also was, he was kind of one shape from his shoulders down to his down to his waist, and so it seemed like the obvious little chirp to be given him. But he was a real good player, while he was at Clarkson, and we definitely connected on a lot of goals. I remember setting him up in Maine that year when after we got our first round bye in the NCAAs. We obviously ended up getting steamrolled by Maine, but after I think it happened right at the end of the first period. All of a sudden, I started getting shadowed out there. I was like, is is this really happening? Like, we're shadowing players at the college level. I don't think I certainly had never experienced it, but it probably hadn't happened to me since I was 11 or 12 years old, since I was playing like squirt hockey, where somebody felt the need to pay attention to me that much.
You were able to represent the U.S. in 2005 and 7 in the World Cups, the 2006 Olympics. We talked a little bit before we started recording here, and a lot of the things that stand out are the names that you bring up, the veterans that you play with who are now still around the league and still making impacts. Walt Tkachuk, whose boys made the hockey world go viral over the last couple of weekends. But in a, if you can summarize it a little bit, what did it mean to you putting on the USA jersey and some of the things that stand out now looking back on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like any hockey player, any opportunity you get to represent your country is such a huge honor. I think any athlete really, feels the same way. I don't know why. Maybe I feel like hockey players just put a little bit more value on it, but maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I think in our minds, we feel like we do, and it's just such a great experience, a great honor, and to your point, the names of the players that I got to play with and compete against even was pretty special for me. You kind of looked up to all of them, and you idolized them for a real good portion of the 90s there, where they were all really great players, and I was able to make it into the league and play against a lot of them, a lot of the guys that I looked up to and really respected on the ice. I think on my list, I think Gretz was the only one I missed in terms of him when he retired. But yeah, I was very fortunate in my career to play against a lot of those great players that I grew up watching and idolizing, and then be able to compete against the next generation and the next wave of players and watch them come in and mature and develop. And I mean, you see guys still going now, playing great. Sid looked amazing in the Four Nations, not surprisingly, but it was it was a really great experience for me to be able to play against some really great players that have come through.
Talk to me a little bit about the differences both in play style and intensity, looking at it from the NHL to go into a national, worldwide kind of tournament, whether that be the World Cups or the Olympics.
Well, it's a little, I feel like it's a little different when you're on the Olympic sheet, just because you can get lost with the extra space out there a little bit. So I think that with it now being kind of narrowed down to it's all usually played at the NHL dimensions, I think it's obviously a lot more physical, and everything is just heightened a little bit. It's like playoff hockey, really. I think that anytime that it's a nation versus another nation, every player wants to represent well and play hard for their country. And you think about the coaches that you had all the way up through USA Hockey, and for me, Oswego minor hockey, and being blessed with great coaches that are they're all watching, and you want to make them proud. And when you're playing for Team USA, you're not just playing for you and your family and your teammates. There's a tremendous amount more of people that have made significant contributions to getting you to where you are, and giving you the opportunity to, pursue your dream. So I think it just, everything, all the emotion and the energy, just, it comes pouring out of you once that puck drops.
You mentioned the extra space. I actually I played intramurals out at the University of Minnesota. They had an Olympic sheet out there, so I'm not the only one that's been
I
lost
basically
in the extra
played in
space
the
there.
Olympics.
No, I'm just saying. I'm glad I'm not the only one getting lost in that extra space.
I didn't say lost. I was just saying that people could. I was kind of talking about you.
There you go. That makes sense. So everyone asks kind of the question of you're looking at Olympic gold versus Stanley Cup, and you have the opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. Do you think you'd trade it in for an Olympic gold?
Never. Nope. No. I wouldn't trade it in. I don't think anybody in their right mind would trade in a Stanley Cup for an Olympic gold. And you can argue that you have the opportunity every season to win a Stanley Cup, and you only have an opportunity to win an Olympic gold every 4 years. But for me, especially in the year that I was in Torino, I can remember getting ready to head back to Carolina after we had been knocked out, and I was pretty upset with how things went in Torino, because I felt like we had a better opportunity than we showed, or we had a better chance to advance and be in the medals. And so it was frustrating. I was frustrated leaving there. And Peter Laviolette, who was our coach there, was also my coach in Carolina, and he grabbed me and just said, "Hey, you keep playing the way you're playing." He said, "We got bigger things ahead of us this year." And we had really gone into that Olympic break with a pretty good exclamation point in Carolina. We had made a trade for Doug Waite in January. We set a franchise record for points in a month, and it was our second 9-game winning streak of the season. And so for me, it was it kind of snapped me out of that sour taste that was in my mouth from the Olympics. And this is only a couple days after it. And I checked right back in to Carolina and what we were doing, in Raleigh. And I had a great start coming out of the break. And unfortunately, I, got my neck broken. I think it was the third game coming out of the break. We played 2 at home and then 1 in Pittsburgh. And so that year, it's a little bit bittersweet for me, because, it's such a high. I'm having a good year. I go to the Olympics, and then, it comes to a screeching halt, and then it ends with, being able to somehow get back into the lineup and play Game 6 and Game 7 and actually, win a Stanley Cup and, feel like I earned the right to put it over my head. So, it was definitely a mixed bag of emotions that year.
Looking at USA Hockey, the United States has become a powerhouse on the world stage at every level now, from World Juniors to now the international best on best that we just saw. From the times when you were playing there, what are the biggest differences that you've seen that have led to the growth and the development programs that the U.S. has put in place that has allowed this rise to greatness?
Well, I think what USA Hockey did was they started turning their attention to, really trying to develop skill in skating a lot more with the ADM programs. But, it seems as though they were looking for, really being able to highlight, that top 5, 10, 15% of player. And you see a lot more first-round draft picks now. You look at all the kids that go through the national development program. I think that where Team USA has now has bona fide superstars that are, in the league, excelling, captains of their team. And then the key on the international stage is you need these guys to sometimes kind of play a little bit outside their role than, what they might, play like during the NHL season with their clubs. But I thought the group this year did really well. I obviously, as much as I loved what I saw in Montreal with the Canada US matchup, it was obviously great to see, and just an absolutely thrilling start to a game. I'm not a big fan of winning rivalry games first. For whatever reason, I always feel like when you win that rivalry game, it always comes back to bite you on the backside when you see them again. So, but it was just, regardless of who ends up winning that tournament, it was just a huge success for the league, the Players Association, and the game of hockey.
We've seen quite a few different iterations of the USA sweater. I know I had some questions about the white buckets with everything else being Navy, but if there's one jersey that you can think of from a USA perspective, and moving forward, what's the jersey that comes to mind for you?
For me, it's 1980. It's an easy one. Yeah, kind of a no-brainer on that one. I feel like the logo hasn't really changed at all. It's just just kind of different, like color schemes a little bit and everything, but like everything being a little bit more navy than like a royal blue and stuff like that. But I always revert back to the 80 jersey for me. Like if you even just mention Olympics, I think of 1980. But I'm also like an interesting story about that. I'm a member at a golf club in South Carolina, and Jack O'Callahan is also a member there. And so I've been able to hang out and listen to stories from him, and just share stories. He's just a wonderful, wonderful character in person, and to be able to sit down and talk hockey with him and everything is just it's incredible, really.
Last question for you, and we'll switch it back from the national stage to the NHL as the hockey season has here. Thursday, as our episode comes out, the hometown upstate New York Buffalo Sabres head down to Raleigh, and Raleigh's such a big growing market. My girlfriend's dad has a passionate despite for the Hurricanes because of what your 2006 team did to his Sabres when he knocked him out there. And the day that I became a Hurricanes fan, he's now had to start sharing his TV because I've transitioned my girlfriend into wearing the Hurricane sweater, but I'm still working on him. So, you've been around Raleigh since just about the start of the franchise, and saw them go through the struggles of the playoff drought, and now being back with the sellout streaks that they've had, the success in the thriving market that now they're renovating around the rink. What about Raleigh, North Carolina, and the fan base there makes it such a thriving market? And for new fans, what would you say is some of the most important things to keep an eye on about the Carolina Hurricanes that might entice them to become Hurricanes fans?
Well, there's a few factors into that where, one, like we're in NCAA country down here typically. It's you're a fan of NC State, Duke, UNC, Wake Forest, even, or even ECU and App State. It's all because Raleigh is so central here in the state that the Carolina Hurricanes are the one pro sports team here, in Raleigh, with the exception of the women's soccer team. And so everyone doesn't matter if you're Duke, UNC, NC State, you can come together and root for the Hurricanes. And I think, that having that opportunity with a team that's got an unbelievable leadership and unbelievable coaching and great players, and they've had year after year playoff berths, not the ultimate success that they're looking for, but they every year they're playing really well. They're making runs in the playoffs, and it's exciting, especially around here, because it's playoff hockey is at a time of year where there's not a lot of other things going on. I mean, a lot of it's the baseball programs and some lacrosse, which have gotten really, really good around here over the last couple decades as well. But I just think with the amount of transplants that we have down here, myself being included, there's a lot of people that have moved down here from northern states and from NHL cities that come down, and they don't necessarily wear the Hurricanes colors, but they want to go see games, and they'd certainly go see when their their hometown team or who they grew up rooting for is in town, and it actually makes for an even better atmosphere at the arena, in my opinion, just because it's just loud, and the fans here are great, really. Like you've witnessed it, but you see the tailgating in the parking lot, and it's 70 degrees here today. There's buffaloes coming down here from a winter chill, so they're going to be treated to some nice weather this week. It's just it's a great market that's continuing to grow. Tom Dundon's doing a wonderful job with not only the in-game product and the fan experience, but to your point about the growth and the development that's going to go on over the next several years around the arena, and building up the area and just continuing to make Raleigh even more of a destination city for not just NHLers, but for fans and for businessmen and women to come here and live and raise their families.
We can't thank you enough for being so gracious with your time and helping us out here on our show. Glad to catch up with you, and hopefully we'll catch up again down in Raleigh coming up in a few months.
Sounds good. I'll be here.